Great. Thank you so much. So I am Jennifer Tuttle. I am the director of the Maine Women Writers Collection and faculty here at UNE. And on behalf of myself and the collection curator, Sarah Baker, along with the Maine Women Writers Collection and UNE, I welcome all of you to the annual Donna M. Loring Lecture. Whether you're here in person, watching online through UNE Live, or viewing a recording of the event later, which will be posted on our YouTube channel. We gather today in the homeland of the Wabanaki people, whose many ancestral and present communities include the Abenaki, Maliseet, Micmac, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot nations, and especially here in Biddeford, the Saco and Secocas peoples, all of whom sprang from these lands and waters and have nurtured them for thousands of generations. Patrick Wolfe reminds us that settler colonialism was not a one-time thing that happened long ago, but is an ongoing systemic process that continues through time and in which we all remain enmeshed. As a settler institution in this place, we recognize that acknowledging this is the beginning and not the end of our responsibility. Maliseet poet Miku Paul calls the waters blue veins containing, and here I'm quoting, ancestral memory, where tributaries meet, flooding undernourished roots that cling to her edges, eroded year by year with forgetting. We're honored and humbled to collaborate with Donna Loring and the many Donna Loring lecturers over the years as we all together do the hard work of remembering. It's thanks to Donna today that the event is happening. And I'd also like to acknowledge the labor of many other contributors, including collection curator Sarah Baker, metadata librarian Laura Taylor, along with past curators Callie Gurley and Kathleen Miller, both of whom are joining us today and have done so much over the years to get us to this point. I'd also like to thank UNE's Office of Communications, especially Lee Cody, Dave Dadiego, and Milo Grammer, who all have the patience of saints, as well as being very, very competent. I'd like to thank Donna's videographer, Chuck Wingo, who's also here. I'd like to thank Amy Hale, Michael Manning, and the Office of Institutional Advancement, as well as UNE's housekeeping, facilities, and Parkhurst staff. I'll also just take this moment to remind you, please silence your cell phones. And we understand that folks may have to leave for 1 o'clock obligations, even though we are very likely going to be chatting beyond that time. So please do not worry if you have to get up before 1 o'clock. We won't look askance. So today we're observing several milestones. Our featured speaker today, the Honorable Donna M. Loring, will offer a tribute to her commanding officer, Captain Joanne Murphy, who has recently passed away but worked during her life to provide for the Loring Lecture's future. Today is also Donna's birthday, so happy birthday, Donna, and many happy returns. Can we give her a show of hands here? And the cupcakes outside are designed to add a special exclamation point to that, so I hope everyone enjoys those. Let's see, finally, the Loring Lecture is celebrating its 15th anniversary, our quinceañera. And since 2009, we have been entrusted with Donna Loring's papers, her personal, professional, and literary papers. And here you can see Donna and Callie Gurley, who was then the curator, doing that hard work of bringing the materials to the Women Writers Collection so that they can stay safe and be findable and used by everyone who wants them. Donna worked with us to institute the lecture at that time, and it's been a profound gift with an exponential impact. And so as we begin our 16th year, we're going to start with a quick retrospective, over the lecture's history. Some of you have been with us every step of the way, but some are more recent arrivals to UNE, and you may not know the full story of the Loring Lecture. So I'm going to go over that real quick, and then I'm going to hand the microphone to Donna. So it's fitting that our inaugural lecture, which was delivered in 2009 by Dr. Rebecca Sock-Bazin, was about centering and mobilizing Indigenous knowledge. It was called Red Hope, Weaving Wabanaki Policy Toward Decolonization. And this was followed in 2010 by Isabel Knockwood's presentation, Out of the Depths, a personal account of a residential school experience and the effects of Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper's apology many years later. I'd like to pause here to acknowledge Isabel. She was a Mi'kmaq tribal elder who passed away in 2020, and she left a great legacy of remembrance through her work, her scholarship, and her personal account of life in a Nova Scotia Indian residential school. Our 2011 speakers were Denise Alvader, Esther Etienne, and Martha Prue, who spoke about their ongoing work as part of the Maine Wabanaki State Child Welfare Truth and Reconciliation Commission, following on Isabel's insights from before. And this talk was followed in 2012 by Anishinaabe author, activist, and heritage farmer Winona LeDuc, who spoke about environmental justice from a Native perspective. And Donna and I were just recalling that her talk was so hugely attended that we had to move it over to USM at Hannaford Hall. In 2013, we welcomed Bunny McBride. And hi, Bunny, I know that you're watching online, whose talk, Listening with 15 Hearts, Life Stories of Women Across Cultures, concerned her research and writing on the history of Wabanaki women. And that includes such books that you might have heard of as Women of the Dawn and a biography of Molly Spotted Elk. That's among many others. The 2014 lecture offered another opportunity to explore the Maine Wabanaki State Child Welfare Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and this was from the perspective of Matt Dunlap, a state official. He was then Maine's Secretary of State. The topic for 2015 was Racism in Maine, Beyond Black and White, in which panelists explored the intersections between institutional racism and cultural genocide from Indigenous, Black, and Jewish perspectives. Our speakers that year were Donna M. Loring, restorative justice healer Keita A. Witten, now Witten Foster, Rabbi Rachel Isaacs, and Robert Bryant, who was the Penobscot Nation Police Department chief. And then in 2016, we had to postpone that event until spring of 17, and that was a dramatic reading of Donna's original play, Mary and Molly in the Spirit of the Ancestors, A Birthday to Remember, which I'm thrilled to note was recently adapted to animated form through Speedwell Contemporary. And this animation was co-directed by Donna and David Camlin, illustrated by Shannon Sokolexis and Ann Pollard-Ranko, with music by Molly Obumsawin. I hope I said that right. The 2017 reading at UNE was directed by the incomparable Assiniboine playwright William S. Yellowrobe, Jr. He is another person who has walked this road with us and has now passed on. And we're really privileged to have worked with him. 2017's lecture had a weather delay, which took it into the spring. This is Maine, after all. Spring of 2018, where we were honored to hear from Penobscot Nation Chief Kirk Francis, who spoke about the case Penobscot Nation v. Janet Mills. He spoke about this as a fight for cultural survival and for the sovereignty of the Penobscot Nation. And then the fall 2018 lecture, Wabanaki Basket Making Traditions Under Threat, Art, Culture, and the Future of Maine Indian Basket Making, also had to do with cultural survival. This event featured talks and work by 4 practicing artists: Pam Outdisses Cunningham, Geo Neptune, Jennifer Neptune, and Sarah Sock Mason, and it was moderated by Dr. Darren Ranko. 2019's event focused on the continued urgency of LD 291, the Maine law sponsored by Donna Loring during her time in the Maine State Legislature that since 2001 has required that K through 12 education incorporate Wabanaki history and culture. And speakers that year were Fiona Hopper, teacher and Wabanaki Studies coordinator for Portland Public Schools, Pender Macon, the Maine Education Commissioner, and Bridget Neptune, a community partner. Now, we did not let the pandemic stop us from continuing this work, and so in 2020, we held the Loring Lecture as a Zoom webinar. The topic was racial health disparities and COVID-19 in Maine, shining a light on systemic inequality. And our wonderful speakers were Crystal Crone of Presente, Maine, Fatuma Hussein, Executive Director of the Maine Immigrant Resource Center, and Lisa Sakabason, Director of Programs and External Affairs for Wabanaki Public Health. We were still online in 2021, where the topic was Racial Justice in Maine State Policy, Understanding the Permanent Commission on the Status of Racial, Indigenous, and Tribal Populations. And our speakers were the Permanent Commission co-chairs, Molly and Bryant, then Dana, who this fall is the new Executive Director of the Wabanaki Alliance, and Maine State Representative Rachel Talbot Ross. Our 2022 event, One Nation Under Fraud, a Remonstrance, featured as speakers the Honorable Eric M. Maynard, Chief Justice of the Penobscot Nation Tribal Court, attorney and UNE alumnus Joseph G.E. Goose, whose 2012 political science senior thesis drew on archival research in the Donna M. Loring papers to examine the racial disparities in Maine's penal system. And of course, Donna M. Loring was our third speaker. And all 3 of them discussed their co-authored report on the history of tribal relations with the state of Maine. And this report was produced for the Permanent Commission on the Status of Racial, Indigenous, and Tribal Populations. And so we also got to hear again from the commission co-chair, Rachel Talbot Ross, that year. And then finally, last year, we all enjoyed a memorable reading by Penobscot author Morgan Talty from his story collection, Night of the Living Rez, along with a preview of his new book, which is now out, Fire Exit. And we are all still glowing from the experience. And if you have not gone out and purchased and read those 2 books yet, I highly, highly recommend them. So today's lecture, a salute to Captain Joanne Murphy and the women who served in Vietnam, is, as you know, to be delivered by Donna Loring herself. So I'd like to say just a few quick words of introduction for her, but take a moment to mention that Joanne Murphy has left a bequest to support the Loring Lecture's health into the future and to expand its possibilities. This adds to an earlier donation by her to the Maine Community Foundation's substantial lead gift when we launched the endowment, and to other generous gifts that have been given to the endowment over the years. The Donna M. Loring Lecture Endowment will fund the lecture program I have just reviewed for you here, because we continue into the future, always. We have no plans to slow down. On the contrary, as the endowment grows, so will the types of programming and speakers we can bring to campus. So, if you believe in this work, and you would like to see more such events and more stories like this being told at UNE, and you are in a position to support the endowment with a donation, please consider doing so. This slide gives you the web address and special instructions. If you're here in person and you're someone who's thinking about it, there are reply cards and a QR code on the table right in the foyer by the food. Very clever of us to put them right by the food. So please consider this or pass it on to other people that you think would like to support this endowment. Thank you. Now, as many of you know, the Honorable Donna M. Loring is a Penobscot Nation tribal elder and former council member who served in the Women's Army Corps in Vietnam, and she's going to share some more information about that with us soon. She grew up on Indian Island, and she earned her BA in political science from the University of Maine at Orono. A graduate of the Maine Criminal Justice Academy, she pursued a career in law enforcement, serving as police chief for the Penobscot Nation, the first woman police academy graduate to become police chief in the state of Maine, and later became the first woman director of security at Bowdoin College. In 1999, she was appointed aide-de-camp to then-Governor Angus King with the rank of honorary colonel and was his advisor on women's veterans affairs. For 12 years, she also represented the Penobscot Nation in the Maine State Legislature. And through this work, as well as her hosting of Wabanaki Windows on WERU Community Radio, her recent work as senior advisor on tribal affairs to Governor Janet Mills, and many other commitments, including depositing her papers with the Maine Women Writers Collection and initiating this lecture program, Donna Loring has devoted herself not only to public service, but to raising public awareness of and dismantling institutional discrimination against Wabanaki people and continuing the hard fight for recognition of their sovereignty. You know about her 2016 play, Mary and Molly, her 2008 book, In the Shadow of the Eagle, a tribal representative in Maine, was recently reissued by DownEast Books. Donna is also a poet, holds 2 honorary doctorates, and has received numerous awards, including a Deborah Morton Award from UNE and the Courage is Contagious Award from the Maine School of Law. Basically, we're all in the presence of greatness here. And so, Donna, we thank you. Happy birthday, and I'm going to cede the floor to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for taking the time to attend this. Appreciate it. I don't usually do my own lecture in my own lecture series, you know, but it's a special occasion because, well, it's my birthday for one thing. You know, I was just talking to President Herbert earlier about getting old. We both kind of commiserated with each other about that. And it's like, you know, you get up in the morning and you look in the mirror and you say, who the heck is that? And what happened to you? And, you know, I got news for you, though. That's the best you're going to look. You're not going to improve. Get used to it. So that's my words of wisdom for the day. All right, so I'm going to, what I want to do first of all is I want to show you, there we go. Yeah, okay. I don't think I can do that from here. You can hear me, right, if I step out?
Yes.
The video might not go.
Is it possible for you?
Well, all right.
Here. How about that?
Yeah, might be awkward. Okay, so this right here, so the women, yeah,
So that I'm not going to break it. There you go. Thank you.
okay, I live to make life difficult for people. So this right here is the Women Vietnam Veterans Our Untold Stories book, okay? So that book was written by Donna Loring. She edited the book. She went and interviewed hundreds of women veterans, along with Priscilla Wilkowitz and Claire Starnes. And so this is the book right here. And it's, you know, it's pretty thick. We got about 700-800 pages here. And it's all about women who were not nurses. Because, you know, all the movies that you see, usually it's like about nurses. Was that Beach series or something about nurses? Well, there were other women that served in Vietnam that were not nurses. And because I don't have a good bedside manner, I wouldn't make a good nurse. So anyway, I'm not going to go into detail about the history of the Women's Army Corps because we don't have time. And it could take at least 1 or 2 hours to do it. So what I'm going to do is I might read 1 or 2 excerpts from this book because I'm in it and Captain Murphy's in it as well. And there's, you know, a lot of other women that are there. So that being said, I want to, first of all, you know, I want to thank Jennifer Tuttle and Callie Curley and Kathleen Miller, because, you know, those are the 3 women that kind of brought the idea up for my papers. I think I was here on some kind of panel or something, and I went to walk out, and I heard, "Donna, wait!" And I turn around, and it's Callie and Jennifer, and they said, "Do you ever consider donating your papers?" And I said, "What papers?" So anyway, after thinking about it, it happened, and we won't go into much detail because we don't have the time. But I just wanted to say thank you to you. So what I want to do is I want to talk about Captain Joanne Murphy, and you can, it's kind of awkward, you can see her. She is this right here. That's me right after I graduated from basic training in the Women's Army Corps. You can see my buck teeth there. So I walked in, well, I mean, this picture right here is me outside the WAC detachment office. And the office door is kind of right there. And the buildings with the slats, those are 2-story buildings. And there were maybe 6 of those. And so anyway, this picture, I got this picture because I walked into the WAC detachment office one day, and the cadre were throwing darts at it. But, you know, Captain Murphy was throwing darts too. So I saw them toss the picture into the trash can, and as soon as their backs were turned, I grabbed the picture, and that's it. So in this, the picture of me with the USAV shirt, I'm sitting outside the detachment, and the person who took the picture the picture was taken by a guy named Terry Lola, who's a Penobscot Nation tribal member, and he had just come out of the jungle, smelly and everything else. And back then I smoked. I don't do that now. So he brought me a carton of Benson and Hedges and and took this picture. And it's the only picture I have from Vietnam because I was not being good. I broke the rules as usual, and I got into a lot of trouble. I would see the commanding officer quite a bit. I was in her office a lot, so we got to know each other. I went to a place called Vong Tau. And I'm not sure if you can see it on this map, but it's like, I'm going to say it, maybe it's around this area, it's out. Long Binh is in here. And anyway, took a helicopter with my friend where we had a curfew at 10 o'clock, and we had to be back by 10 every night. So my friend had a birthday, so we snuck out. She knew a helicopter pilot. We got into the helicopter and went over to Vung Tau and ended up swimming in the South China Sea in our fatigues, because we just jumped in. I mean, we had a little bit too much to drink. Jumped into the South China Sea. And actually, I ended up, because I'm afraid of heights. This is how much I had to drink. I'm afraid of heights, and I found myself dangling from a McGuire lift from the helicopter, which is one of those, it's a kind of rope thing, kind of like this, you know, and you put your foot in, and you hang on to the rope, and the copter brings you up. So one of the colonels that were there came running up and said, "You get her down now," because, right across the bay, they had snipers there. And it was not a good idea to be dangling in the air when there's a sniper. So we got down, and because I had my camera with me there too, and we got word that a bunch of, a group from, Charlie Company or whatever, Charlie was on its way, the North Vietnamese, and we had to get out of there. So we hightailed it to our jeeps, got to the helicopters and whatever, and left our camera. And I had changed into tiger fatigues, which was not legal for women to be wearing. So I ended up back at the detachment wearing tiger fatigues. So anyway, that was that was one thing, one instance. But Captain Murphy she was brought up in kind of a religious environment, you might say. And she went to St. Mary of the Woods School. It's funny because there's a contrast there, because I went to a religious school too, but my school was Protestant, hers was Catholic. So she went to that school and eventually graduated from school. I don't know if she graduated from St. Mary's of the Woods, but that's in Indiana. I think she moved. But anyway, when she joined the military, she joined it right out of school. And she went to the commission. She got trained to be a commissioned officer. And I'm not used to telling stories, so bear with me here. So she graduated from officers training, and found out that she was one of 3 officers that were being considered to be the commanding officer, the second commanding officer of the WAC detachment in Long Binh, Vietnam. Now, when she found out about that, I'm going to read an excerpt from this book. And she said, 29. That's not it. Here we go. She said, no, I don't want to go. Select one of the other 2. There's a war going on. She said, was my response to the 5th Army WAC staff advisor when she told me I was one of 3 officers being considered. I was the one selected, and I couldn't be happier with the decision. My 8 years, 9 months, and 14 days were among the happiest of my life. I was in the Women's Army Corps, and that was the happiest time during those 8 years. I was scared every day for the safety of the women. But they gave me strength to be what I never thought I wanted to be, a commanding officer. Now that we're in our twilight years, I'm so happy to say that many of these women have become my very dear and lifelong friends. So with Joan, Captain Murphy, let's go back to when I walked into the WAC detachment with orders that they had never seen before because I really didn't belong there. My occupation was a combat occupation, which was a communications specialist, and women were not allowed in combat or in the combat areas. But I had a friend who I talked into putting me on orders for Vietnam, which we did. You know, the orders came down, and if you looked at the orders really closely, you would see that the orders told me to wear a khaki uniform and low-quarter black shoes. That's a men's uniform. Whereas women, there were women assigned there, and they wore class, I think they call them class B, which is the green cord uniforms with the dress and the heels and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So no, I didn't go like that. So anyway, I show up in Vietnam with the orders, and I walk into the room, and there's the commanding officer, Captain Murphy, on the left, and then on the right side are these desks with the first sergeant, the clerk, and an administrator. I can't remember the exact titles of those positions now. But I handed my orders to the first sergeant, and she was really baffled. But that's a long story, so I'm not going to go into that. It was figured out, and I ended up, billeting, staying in the WAC detachment, and working in the communications center, which is where I handled all the casualty reports in Southeast Asia, and that included Cambodia and Laos. So we weren't supposed to be in those places, but at the time, there were thousands of casualty reports coming in, and so we were there in 1968. It was, they call it the Tet Offensive. It was where most of the casualties ever in 1 year, 1968, took place. I think it said 16,000 were killed, American soldiers. So we, in the WAC detachment, we had a ammunition dump, which was about a mile away from us. And those pads handled tons, stored tons of ammunition, mortars, and all kinds of shells. And whenever the supply people would come to pick up those mortars and shells, they would just get them out, get them in, and get them out, because it's so dangerous. And the first hit at the ammo dump, it was in January. It was the first day of Tet, which was the Vietnamese New Year. And it was like, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning when those, I found out later that the dump had been infiltrated by something like 18 North Vietnamese troops. They went in and they planted explosives in 18 of the different areas. And they of course, they found them and they got rid of them, but I think they only found like 3 of the planted explosives. So it's about 100 hours, those explosives went off. And when they did, the percussions of that explosive blew out the doors in our buildings and windows, and even blew people off the top bunks. And there are instances in this book where the women talk about what happened to them during that explosion. There were also there was a second hit, and it was in February. And I remember that hit because I was a private. I was the lowest ranking person in the company. So I was the last one in line to be paid. So I remember that morning, it was like 7:30 in the morning. We're waiting to be paid, and there's like stacks of military certificates for pay. They didn't give you money. So there was lots of stacks there, and the commanding officer was issuing people their paychecks or whatever. So all of a sudden, wham, we got hit. And there was people, hit the ground, and we kind of like crawled around and looked into the office, and the money or the PC or whatever was strewn all over the place, and commanding officer was under the desk, and it was quite a mess. I remember also one other time when they hit a chlorine bunker that was close to us. And again, we were standing outside, and I happened to notice people like cry, like the tears were coming down, and the woman came running out of the office saying, get your masks on because the chlorine bunker's been hit. And so I ran and I got on my mask, and it wouldn't seal. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die happy. So I went to the refrigerator, pulled out a six-pack, and went to the day room and proceeded to drink my six-pack. Needless to say, I survived. But, I was in trouble all the time. I would miss curfew, and I would get caught. So the Captain Murphy knew me as sort of like the bad Donna. There were two Donnas. There was the good Donna and the bad Donna. The good Donna was Donna Loring, the one who wrote this book. The bad Donna was the one that was always in our office, always in trouble. So about, I'm going to say 30 years later, when they were doing this research for the book, they tracked down all of us, and I was able to contact Captain Murphy. And at that point, I think she was maybe 60, close to 70. And I was going to go to San Antonio for a business meeting, and so set up a meeting to see her. And when I got off the plane, she's waiting, and I thought to myself, who's that little old lady, And it was Captain Murphy. So, we talked, and she came to my room every morning to wake me up. We would go to breakfast. I'd go to my conference. And then I invited her to come to Maine to visit. And so let me just tell you about this. It doesn't work. Wait a minute, let me get the other one. Let me just backtrack a little bit here. This is a combat boot. It has a glass inside it full of champagne. So this is my commanding officer. And it was tradition for the commanding officer to give somebody the boot to drink, because she was going to leave in like the next day or whatever. So we had this big party. So she gave that to me, and of course I drank all of it. So this is her mother. And her mother and I got along pretty well, actually. And people always tell me that these mean old women like you. So I don't know. She wasn't mean though. She wasn't mean. So she actually was a crafty kind of person, and she knitted this teddy bear, for me. And I took it with me to the legislature. And it was sat on my desk the whole time that I served in the legislature. And it might surprise some people to know that after all of that trouble I was in Vietnam or whatever, I ended up, this is me being sworn in as the honorary colonel, the aide-de-camp for the governor of the state of Maine, and General Earl Adams put the colonel, the eagles on me, and that happened on February 14th, 1999. And I remember because they asked me what date I would like to be sworn in, and I said February 14th, because it's Valentine's Day. And also because, I wanted to kind of show that, hey, this E2, this person that was in trouble at 19 all the time, actually came out of it. When I contacted Captain Murphy, I said, oh, I bet you thought I'd be in some woman's prison, right? She just laughed. She said, well, yeah, I thought maybe. So anyway, so she came to visit, and we put her to work right off here, She insisted on painting that shed, because we couldn't. She always had to do something. So this is the camp, our friend of mine's camp on Hopkins Pond, where we stayed. And this is her. She's enjoying herself. She liked her whiskey and she liked to pipe. So she had both of those things. And this is, she liked to sit here and look out onto the water. We had a lot of good times. She was very, I got to tell you one good story about her. When she came to visit us, at one point we were living in Richmond, just south of Augusta. And the plumbing, we had a leak in the plumbing or whatever. And she said, oh, I know how to fix that. I'll fix that. So we took her to the hardware store, right? Well, don't mess with Joanne Murphy. I don't care. She goes in and she's looking for her piece of whatever that thing is. I don't know what it was. But she tells the hardware guy, this is what I want. And he looks at her and he says, are you sure you want that? And she looks at him and she says, do I have stupid written across my forehead? I looked at Debbie and like, oh my God, we're gonna have to move. So yeah, I mean, she's quite the lady, and she had values that she learned. When you're growing up, that's when you get your sort of, I think anyway, when you get your values and the things that cultural kind of things you learn. And she learned hers at the St. Mary's of the Woods in Indiana. And she spent a lot of time trying to get back to St. Mary's of the Woods. And during her last year, she finally made it back. They have a rehab or convalescent home or whatever, and hospice. And she got back to the woods, And her nieces, Rachel and Sarah, would visit her every day. And she'd have to have her Starbucks really strong coffee. And she'd have like a cigarello. She wouldn't smoke it, but she'd have it. And I would send her stuff, you know, send her a care package of Starbucks and chocolate, stuff she shouldn't have, but I sent it to her anyway. And she would tell her nieces that when she was at St. Anne's of the Woods, she would look out the window and she would see the marigolds in the field. So at her memorial service, I sent this with a little picture of a glass of whiskey on the side, where it says, "May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sunshine warm upon your face. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand." So that's it. I mean, I could go on for another hour talking about women, our experiences in Vietnam, but we are very limited in our time. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer your questions.
Donna, thank you so much. So because we're recording this and because there are folks watching from home, we just ask that everyone speak into the mic when you pose your question so that everyone else can hear it beyond the privileged group here, okay? So I'll start here and then you can pass it on.
Donna, I'm curious to hear what made you want to enlist in a combat zone in Vietnam, like why you felt called to do that.
Well, I grew up with uncles that had served in World War II, in Korea, and my father served in Germany. And I would listen to war stories, and, you know, as a kid, you're impressionable, you know, and you kind of romanticize that stuff in your head. And so I thought, oh, gee, you know, I kind of like to experience some of those adventures. So yeah, that was one of the reasons I joined the military, was to go to Vietnam. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think the experiences that you had were unlike any, you know, that I've ever had. Or my cousin was actually on an aircraft carrier off the coast of that during that period of time, but of course he never saw combat. But I have a question, sort of technical. On your first screen where you were entering data, I'm curious what kind of a data processor that was that you were...
I have no idea. It's downloaded from the internet. Actually, those red marks are where Charlie attacked. And the, find this here, is the X's. You can't see it, but there are these X's. There's one there, and there's one in Long Binh and Benoit right in there. Those are where they actually brought troops in to attack.
So, was it a word processor, a fancy word processor?
Back then?
It was a computer.
I have no idea what it... No. That, I think, is pretty modern. I think that was just done by information, you know, that they had.
Yeah. My other question is, are those casualty reports public information, do you know, from back then?
I don't know. I can't imagine that. Well, why wouldn't they be now? You know, it would seem to me they'd be declassified after
Curious to see.
so many years. I mean, in December, during Tet, I think Tet lasted from January to February, all that fighting. They said that the casualties were not that high. And when I was processing the casualty reports, I could not see over the tops. They were so, I had so many.
Hi, Donna. My name is John. I was born in 1953. I was 15 in 68, and the war was very much part of our daily lives back in the States. In 71, I got my draft number, and it was 10. And those of you who have any knowledge of draft numbers know that I was going. And thankfully, Richard Nixon, of all the many things he did wrong, he did end the draft. And I got my life back. And I just wanted to thank you for your brave service and for the time you spent there and for the danger that you were in.
Yeah. Well, at 19, it was not, I didn't see it as being a big danger. I saw it as an adventure, someplace I wanted to go. But right from, and a lot of the women in the book will tell you the same story. When they were sent to Vietnam, they were on a private plane, these big Braniff international airplanes, and there'd be like 200 troops on the flights. And they'd be the only woman. So on top of getting all kinds of attention and whatever, once you flew over Ton Son Nhut, because everybody landed in Ton Son Nhut, it was a big long airfield. Once you got there, you could not just make a normal landing with the plane. You had to drop, kind of, because there were snipers, and especially at night, it was scary. And a lot of the women will tell you that. And then after spending a year there and leaving, the out processing, you went to Benoit, where you processed out. And Charlie would like to hit those places where you're processing out as a morale. It was not a booster, but the opposite, where you'd think, well, my time here's done. I'm getting on the plane. I'm going home. Bam, you're dead. So they like to do that. And they like to shoot at the planes as they were leaving. And I'm going to tell you that everybody held their breath when they got on that plane to leave Vietnam. And they didn't exhale until they were past Guam. And when they said that we're past Guam, everybody just broke out into applause. So.
More questions?
How long were you there again? What, 68 to?
67 to 68, November 67 to November 68. Yep.
So when you came back stateside, Captain Murphy was already stateside, right?
Yes.
When did you next meet up? Was it
About 30 years later.
30 years later, you said.
Yep.
What did she do in that intervening time, and what did you do right after you got out?
I'm not sure what she did, actually. I just knew she retired. I don't know. What I did was I did all kinds of stuff. I went to school. I went to police academy.
So that's when you went to UMaine when you came back.
Yeah, I did all that stuff. And I just didn't go to UMaine and just go and graduate. I had to stop because I had to pay for my house and whatever, so I had to go work for a while, come back, and it took me a while to graduate. Even though they had tuition, Native people had tuition waivers, but I didn't. It was my choice not to stay there on campus. I wanted to have my own house, live my own house, and so that's what I did. In between my times in school, I went to work for a while and then came back.
What did you do for work in those intervals? Do you remember?
Well, one time I was a detective for the Penobscot County Sheriff's Office. That was fun. Then I became a reserve police officer, a lot of law enforcement stuff, reserve police officer, and then I went as an acting corporal, and then an acting sergeant, and then an acting chief. You know, I could have got an Academy Award. I did so many acting, but but yeah, that's what I did.
May I ask, and then I'm going to pass it over to Michael, did I understand that Joanne was a photographer?
Yes,
Really?
I forgot to
us
tell you about that. Yeah, her specialty was photographing buildings, architecture, and she photographed the Alamo in so many different ways. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, she had her own gallery. That's what she did. What about that? Yeah.
Donna, hi. I'm Michael Cripps. Thank you. I want to ask, you're a bit of a troublemaker.
I am.
Yep.
Even now.
Well, I didn't say you used to be a troublemaker. So I'm curious about what that looks like getting in trouble. So you tell some stories about, missing curfew, maybe showing up with the wrong fatigues. I have this imagining of like ending up in the brig.
Oh no.
How do you avoid
not the
sort of
brig.
discharge? Like, because the sort of you have, Captain Murphy, and then you're circumventing the rules.
Yeah.
What's that sort of like?
Well,
What's
you
that
get-
look like? Yeah.
It looks like an Article 15. That's what it looks like. You know what that is?
Well, I do, but
If you're military, you
wanna
know what that.
explain-
Article 15 is when you get written up for doing something. And sometimes you even get busted. Like if you go in, it's PFC, like I did, and you get busted down to E2, which is what happened to me. So I came out an E2 over 2, meaning E2, rank E2. Over 2 years in the military, I was still an E2. That's why the swearing in as honorary colonel meant so much, because I went from E2, from that status at 19, up to advising about the women's in the military to the governor. So, So, you don't have to be bad all your life. They call me badass. But
So, your military service basically, I'm seeing it, set you up for the things that you did later and your path in life. And I now see how significant that was in what you chose to do later on and your accomplishments.
yeah, but what set me up for the military service was the religious school I went to. I went to a private religious school called Glen Cove Christian Academy. And they were Baptist. And they would tell you that they were interdenominational, but they were Baptist. And there were some pretty hard rules there. And of course, I got kicked out a couple of times. But I mean, it did. It kind of set me up for the military.
The criminal justice and,
Well, never in a million years would they have thought, oh, she's going to be a police chief? No way. Yeah.
Hi, Donna. My name is Amy, and I was not born in 1953 like John, but I have been around long enough that I remember very, very clearly that 2010 lecture with Isabel Knockwood.
Yeah.
And I'm from Nova Scotia, and I remember sitting and listening to that. And at the time, I mean, Stephen Harper had just given his apology, but things were still very, very new. Now, today's your birthday. Yesterday was Canada's National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, and we've sort of gone the opposite way in Canada, where it's almost kind of trendy and sort of lost some of its authenticity. but that talk still resonates with me and sits so deeply, and it was just so impactful for me. So all that to say, thank you for this lecture series, and thank you for that experience.
Yeah, well, thank you for attending for so many years. Because, you know, there are a lot of issues, serious issues out there. And this lecture series helps to get that message out. And I have never asked anybody for donations or funding or anything. But if you're going to donate something, donate it to this lecture series.
Hi there. I'm wondering, Donna, when you returned from Vietnam, if you felt like your service as a woman was comparable to your service as a man. And I guess not do you consider your service, but was there any type of sexism, or did you feel like you had the same benefits from Veterans Affairs as men did at that time?
Well, Women's Army Corps was separate. I mean, it's a historic thing. Like, it's hard to say because, you know, what we were looking at was women, first of all, and then the service of Native Americans. So it's hard to say, you know, but I think women, maybe we didn't get the same benefits as the men did. I'm not sure about that. I didn't pay much attention to it, actually. But maybe it's something I'll go back and look at, you know. But we were there to take the place of men while they went out into the field. You know, if there was a man who was doing clerk work, we would do that clerk work to free that man up to go out into the jungle, into the combat areas. That's the idea of sending wax to those kind of areas.
Any other questions? Oh, one more.
Hi, Donna. My name is Janice. Thank you for your service. I read The Women by Kristen Hanna. It's a fictional novel about...
nurses, right?
Yes, nurses, exactly.
Yeah, we need one about non-nurses.
We do.
Go ahead.
And there was a chapter at the end of the book, I listened to it on audio, and she talks about all her reference books. And I'm sure this was one of them. I'm going to go back and listen again and possibly even get a copy to read. I was 13 in 1968, but it was such an emotional time in our nation, in our schools, in the public eye, what was happening. And I was just curious if you had read the book, and also the fact that because this book's been on the bestseller list for...
I know it's had great reviews.
It's
and
brought a tremendous amount of interest in women that served at that time as donut girls, as nurses, as, you know, just soldiers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, women, you know, nurses did a great service. They really did. But then there are other women that served in communications, in logistics, you know, supply, intelligence, other parts of the military that are never recognized. And so hopefully sometime I'm trying to get, I don't know if you know J. Courtney Sullivan. I don't know if she wrote The Cliffs.
Oh.
She's a friend of mine. As a matter of fact, she dedicated The Cliffs to me. So if you get a chance, read it.
I will.
I'm trying to talk her into doing something on the non-nurses, you know, a novel on that. We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to second that recommendation for The Cliffs. It's an incredible book. Yeah.
She did put a lot of research into that book. Yeah.
the women, yeah. Other comments, questions?
One more plug. This book.
Yes.
And this one, this one talks about the women and their stories. It's stuff that you wouldn't even think of. So, yeah.
Oh, okay, for the recording, hello. You were 19 when you were there. Were you ever totally afraid, scared?
I was too dumb to be totally afraid and scared.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's cool. You are BA.
Thank you. Well, I think that is a wonderful note on which to conclude, because that is absolutely true. Donna, thank you so much for sharing this, and thank you to Joanne for all she did for you and all she has done for so many others, and certainly for helping inspire us to move forward with building the lecture endowment so we can do even more with it every year. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, those of you who are tuning in. And please help yourselves to either reply cards or food or cupcakes or both on your way out. So thank you again so much. Thank you to Donna. Happy birthday.